Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sediko Rakolote. I'm the trustee and the founder of Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. It is a public benefit trust that was established purely to do public benefit activities. It's like an NPO, non-profit making trust. One of the activities that we are doing, one activities that we are doing is webinars where we host various speakers to talk about various topics. Today, we will be looking at the link between the politics, the state, and the government. But one has to understand a definition of politics. The direct definition of politics is that it is activities associated with the governance of a country or an area. That's a classical definition of politics. But those who participate in politics, they will tell you that there are different political ideologies that political parties subscribe to. The most common political ideologies is the communist ideology, the liberal ideology, the conservative ideology, and the fascist ideology. So the ideologies are divided into three. There are the leftist ideologies, there are the center ideologies, and the right ideologies. And within our country, all political parties subscribe to a particular ideology. They don't just exist in a vacuum. They are informed by a particular ideology. I am not the presenter today. We have managed to...
Nobody cares.
We have managed to get one of the presenters who is experienced in politics.
Be quiet.
He has been around. He has been around in politics for some time. He served in a local municipality, in a district municipality, and in a provincial government. He has been serving as a chairperson of SCOPA, and now has been appointed as a NEC of Economic Development. But today he's here in a cap of a member of ANC, PEC, and PwC, and also a head of political education and training. Without a waste of time, I'll hand over to you, Comrade Rogers Monama. Over to you, Logwane. Comrade Rogers. You are muted, Comrade Rogers. We are struggling hearing Comrade Rogers.
The excitement leading up to that finale.
Comrade Rogers. Comrade Rogers, we are struggling hearing you. Okay. Over to you, Comrade Rogers.
No, thanks very much for affording me this opportunity, Mr. Sediko Rakolote, for facilitating this event. I don't know which criteria have you employed to identify me as one of those people that must come and share my my views and my thoughts around this very critical and sensitive topic, and allow me just to express my profound sense of gratitude to appreciate this rare moment bestowed on me on this platform, share my ideas and thought about the linkages between conceptual interrelatedness and interdependence of the state, government and politics, but just to juxtapose and delineate what is the dichotomy between the state and government, but also just to demystify some of the myths that are obtainable in the public domain, as if these are inextricably interrelated and there is no difference. They are being used as synonyms, and how they affect each other, and what is my understanding on the subject matter as a thought leader. But before I transact and discuss and dissect the topic, let me greet everyone on the platform as part of the rituals for joining us in this and to follow us in this very academic discussion. And the hypothetical question that one will want to pose, but also try to provide a solution on this very same political practices. Is there a difference between a state and government? Or they are the concept used interchangeably as if they are synonyms? And there is that confusion that is prevalent, that they are the same. And my responsibility is that I have to clarify all these concepts, and I'm subjected to scrutiny and interrogation by the participant in this platform. You have already tried to unpack the issue of the politics, but safe to say that let me just upfront state my view on the politics, not necessarily saying what you said. You try to highlight some critical points and features of what is a politics.
Nobody cares. Be quiet.
In the simplest term, politics to me is what we call a concentrated economy. And I'll unpack further when I say that is a concentrated economy. Is an economy either political,
you can mute now,
and so forth, or a social.
Comrade Rogers, just hold. We want to remove a guest called Jeb. He has hyped our thing. Jeb, we'll remove Jeb. I'm struggling removing Jeb. Aluana, please assist on the other side. Just a minute.
I've removed him. Jeb has been removed from the meeting, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can continue, Comrade Rogers.
No, thanks very much for that opportunity. Let me start with this concept and around the debate. A quick question that one, like I said, a hypothetical question that we must first try to answer: is there a difference between a state and the government? And I know for sure that there exists a different understanding on the two concepts between ordinary citizens, political scientists, international legal students, and our friends in the academia and intellectuals about the definition of these two concepts. Therefore, it is my duty as a thought leader, like I said, to clarify this misunderstanding on the two concepts, the state and government, once we begin to have that understanding on the difference between the two concepts, then we'll be able to establish and understand the linkage between the state, government, and the politics, their interconnectedness, and so forth. So without wasting much of the time, let me state upfront that facilitator and colleagues, a state is distinguishable from government in the sense that the state is a permanent institution that cannot be seen with a naked eye, while government is not permanent and can be seen with an eye. That is a critical point that I wanted to bring home. The state cannot be changed, but government can be changed. That's why we are having elections. And in a democratic situation like our South African, in a South African context, you will see that after every 5 years, there is a change of government. They have to go to the election so that the party that is in government that leads get a new mandate, the legitimacy to represent the will of the people. The state has four important elements that I wanted to isolate. That's your population, territory, government included, and sovereignty. You normally hear about what we call the sovereignty of the state. Firstly, you'll definitely agree with me that all of us here as people, as citizens of the state, and together we constitute what is known as a population of a state. And what I'm trying to say from the academic point of view is that membership of the state is compulsory. That's where I think we need to state upfront, and I'm prepared to defend my assessment on that very same issue. But this cannot be the same for government, because government is not compulsory. It's something that you can choose to be part in terms of the membership or not. And secondly, the issue of sovereignty is the hallmark of the state, and which means sovereignty belongs only to the state. Sovereignty, what I'm trying to say, Chair, is that is absolute, unlimited, and all-inclusive supreme power of the state. Thirdly, the state has a sovereign ownership and the jurisdiction over its territory. In other ways, the state is what we call a territorial entity, if I have to put it in a business language. But when you go to government, government has that sole and primary responsibility to preserve, protect, and defend the territory of the state. That's why I think I wanted to give that dichotomy, so that there is that clear understanding, so that all of us were in the same frequency of issues. The state has what he called a government, which is a group of people, administrative bureaucracy, that control the state's apparatus at a given time, like I've already alluded to, on the question of, that's why we have the electoral cycle, that after every 5 years for provincial and national, the same with the municipal sphere of government. So if I go without wasting your time, because I wanted to give you more time to engage with me on this subject and very contentious issues that I think if all of us who are on board will be able to exchange ideas and thoughts on those matters. I've already indicated, Chair, that government is not a permanent institution, which means that it can be changed at any time through election in a democratic society, through a military coup d'etat or a revolution. A revolution can be waged to change government, as it sometimes happens everywhere around the world. Government comes and goes. That's what I think people normally casually just say so. But in a democratic society, it means that for a particular period in other countries is about 4 years, in South Africa is 5 years, and so forth, where different political parties contest election, compete for power through election. But that power is to control the government. And as such, there is that, because when you have that power, you are able to advance your manifesto, you are able to distribute resources and to some extent dispense patronage, because these are the electorates that have bestowed confidence on you to say that this is a party which very good policies. Let me come home in South Africa. We once have an apartheid government under the National Party, which was changed in 1994 through a democratic process. And with the African National Congress, I think, which I'm a member in good standing, establishing a democratic government since then, we did not change the facilitator, the state, but we changed the government. The change of apartheid government was not done through coup d'etat. It is sometimes happen in other parts of the world, more especially in Africa, through a revolution, but through democratic election. And what I'm trying to say is that government is a means through which the power of the state is deployed or exercised. You don't have power until it's exercised. What I'm saying is that, Chair, government exercises the power and authority on behalf of the state. Government exercises the power and authority on behalf of the state that is absolute, and it has its sovereignty. I just wanted to state that point and ventilate more about that. But also, Chair, I didn't want to just to share my thought, but also what is an academic literature in the process. You'll have that understanding that as part of the researchers. I have to put more emphasis on the scientific resource that we have, why I've arrived at a particular conclusion and determination. When you read the work of Montesquieu, or which is known, later the work of what we call John Locke in the 19th century, they did clearly and explicitly indicate that the political authority of the state is to be divided into two distinct, independent, but sometimes complementary arms of the state. What do we normally call the separation of power? That's where you have your legislature, your executive and judiciary, and each arm of state has its own powers, authority conferred upon it by the country's constitution. We know that in South Africa, the constitution is the supreme authority, and it regulates all of us and is the one that gives determination in terms of the separation of power, which arm of the state has a particular responsibility. The same way that they were complaining that the courts are taking over our responsibility as legislatures, for instance. But the fundamental question is that the court or the judiciary is just there for the interpretation of the laws that has been passed by the very same government. And as and when we don't have a common understanding on interpretation and application of a particular piece of legislation, that's where all of us, we rush to court to say, what is the correct interpretation? Whereas we are the ones who must have a better understanding because we are the initiator of the very same legislation that we normally take to each other to court. So what I'm trying to say is that, Chair, just to state upfront and categorically, is that each arm of the state has its own powers, authority conferred upon it by the country constitution. For example, the legislative arm of the state exercises the lawmaking and oversight authority. That's why we have what we call the legislative oversight. But over and about the public participation, whereby democracy in a democratic situation must obtain. While the executive arm exercises the authority to apply and administer the law enacted and passed by the legislative arm. And that thing of accountability within the accountability ecosystem, that's where the issue of the executive accounting to the legislative authority find expression. But the judiciary is responsible for the judicial review of these laws, adjudication over the dispute that may arise from the application of the law. Of course, Chair, all these three arms of the state then constitute what is known as government. When you look at this, it becomes very clear and explicit that government acts on behalf of the state by formulating and translating the will of the state into laws through the legislatures. Your National Assembly, your provincial legislatures and municipal councils. That's where it is. And implementing the state laws through the executive and enforcing conformity and compliance to the state laws through the judiciary. I think that was the simplest way that I wanted to put it, so that all of us were on the same wavelengths of issues. What is so important and critical, Chair, is to note is that the laws made by government are applicable to all parts of the state territory and to all the people within the state. And the linkages, Chair, between the politics and government, having clarified and thoroughly explained the distinction between the state and government, I now tend to explain the linkages between the politics, the state, and government. When you read political science and other literature, you find, or the public administration scholars, and that's where I think I belong, you begin to understand that government around the world are entered into or constructed by political parties. That's where the issue of the politics find expression. Be it a case, it might be one political party, two political parties, or several political parties, doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. Hence, earlier on, I said government are not permanent structures. I think you'll understand it in that context. They are often changed through election, coup d'etat, revolution, and in some instances, even through wars. In the South African context, Chair, whereby we have what we call a multi-party democracy, meaning that more than 3 political parties, there are many, more than 20, 50, 100, they contest the election, with the potential to gain control of government, regularly competing for that power at national, provincial, local levels. And that's where I think one of the debates that we have to enter into. People go to elections, they lose the election, they form a coalition. That's one discussion which is very important. And they gang against the party that has won. And they are not representing the will of the people, by the way, because their votes is just a fraction of what has happened, the electoral support. But just because one party did not get the 50% plus and above, that regularized that that party must then be the leader. You'll find a party which is significant following and support leading. What are the contradictions that I think we have to do? This is a debate for another day, not for today. But is it the will of the people? When you look at some of these metros that we did, the African National Congress obviously has won those metros and metropolitan cities that we have, but they are not there their hegemony is not there. They are on the opposition bank and benches, and you ask yourself, what is democracy? And that's one debate that I think in the battle of ideas, we need to discuss and further to say, if we are saying that a political party means through which citizens raise their voices and have a say in governance of any country. In other words, it is through political parties that citizens have a voice, have a choice to make more informed decision about their future on any policy imperative or policy problem that they may face, because the question is how best these political parties change the socio-economic conditions of their people and pushing back the frontiers of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. But over and about, how do we ensure that we push back the quagmire of poverty and underdevelopment through the political parties that we normally elect? And if you ask yourself, if I have to juxtapose the coalition government, how they benefit people, what is their policy position? Because it's just a mixture of manifestos which are not the same. Because when they go to the election, they were campaigning with different policies. That's why their sustainability is always questionable. Therefore, it is a work of the political parties to mobilize a society and persuade voters to support a particular political party for a set of interests, common sets of interests, concerning policy proposals that I think will transform the livelihood of the people that they've elected for that particular party. We all know that each party tries to convince and persuade electorates in a country like ours that democracy cannot exist and thrive without the presence of political party. That's a fact. And that's a constitutional matter that is there that I think we can be innovative or creative to say, this is where we must go, this is how we can do, and so forth. A political party that wins the election then forms government and give a political direction to the policy imperative adopted by that political party. So it becomes very clear that we cannot divorce politics from government. I've demonstrated that there is a close and tight relationship between politics, the state and the government in any given political system that we have. And South Africa is not immune from this arrangement. So I advise the public administration scholars and other practitioners to refrain from claiming that it's possible to separate politics from the government or government administration. The same way, Chair, with what we call the cater deployment. I don't know what it means, but it's a debate on its own that we have to venture into, because people are misconstruing the deployment cater policy of the African National Congress. Because if you go to the US, you know that unlike with us, you know that after every elections, the newly elected president comes with his staff or her staff. And in our case, we just appoint people, but those people that are being appointed, there are some requisite skills, but also there is the recruitment policy that they have to comply with that before they are appointed. So they are qualified just because they belong to a particular party, despite the fact that they have impeccable academic qualification, requisite skills. They are being said, no, this is a political deployment. But you'll find, you go into these other political parties, for instance, in Tswana, at some stage you have what you call a chief of staff, who did not possess a post-matric qualification. But that responsibility needs a person with a degree, for instance. But that one, no one questioned it. But when it is the ANC which bring a person with master's degree, just because he's a comrade, then people question it. You know, in the province, for instance, I've seen Comrade Thabo Mokoni on the platform that even in the legislature in the province, one person just of the opposition party, which I won't mention today, he attended the 3-day course. From there, he was told that is a master's, but you can't have a master's in 3 days. And no one is saying anything about this matter. But if it was supposed to be done by the ANC, you will hear a lot of noise about this very same subject matter to say, this is the ANC that is corrupt, the ANC which is not ethical. But what is key, the ANC always prefer competent and capable cadres or corps of practitioners to advance what we call capable and developmental stage. And you can't do that if you don't have skilled, and it's there in the documents of the African National Congress. So the experience practice clearly demonstrate that the two are inseparable, the politics and government administration. As a scholar in that regard, I think I'm more knowledgeable in terms of what is happening, but I have that in-depth knowledge in terms of the separation of power between the two concepts. What is important for us as politicians is to allow government administration to do their work without interference, but we, however, influence how such work must be done in one way or another. But that the interference does not necessarily mean that you, as the political head, you don't have a political responsibility to guide and to give a strategic guidance on that, because sometimes people think that when you are politicians, you don't interfere. You have to intervene. Your public finance management is very clear in terms of what are the fiduciary responsibilities of the accounting officers and accounting authorities, and what is the role of a political head is there in the PFMA, and then people are not interested. You cannot just fold your eyes when things are happening, and you are the only one who must go to the legislature to go and account, to say this is what has happened. The fundamental question was that where was your oversight role? Why didn't you exercise the oversight role? And I think I've said mouthful, Chair, and a lot of people have benefited from this conversation, I think, and I'm ready for engagement. This is a subject matter that I'm more interested. That's why I did not even prepare some notes. I'm just speaking from my mouth, from the experience that I have, but also as the head of the political education desk of the African National Congress, just to share my views, Chair, on that matter. But I know that is a subject matter of interest, is a matter that is very contentious and to some extent very controversial on all those aspects that I think I've alluded to. Thanks very much, Facilitator. I think I did not spend much time because from the academic point of view, you are the ones who have to adjudicate over this discussion so that we engage in terms of the battle of ideas, how best we can improve our democracy, but how best also we must stop some tendencies that deprive the democratic processes an opportunity to advance their ideas, their manifestos to improve the lives of our people. Like people are saying that the ANC is disparate, they want to go back and take all these municipalities to loot all these state coffers and so forth. In the province, for instance, when I exist, when you check the state of municipality in the province, the worst performing municipality in the province is Modimolle Mokgopo and Thabazimbi. And those are led by the opposition parties. But the rest that are being led by the ANC, except one, of course, which is there always reported, but also it has improved. It has dramatically improved in that regard. But those two, they are the ones who give us a a bad image as a province, that we don't get clean audits in the province. And they were supposed, instead, the representative in the legislature will tell you about the Western Cape, but they're here in Limpopo, they are not talking about all these shenanigans, malfeasance, and maladministration in those two municipalities. And they say that they will bring clean governance. Whereas here, where we have their own councillors, they are unable to do that. Thanks very much for affording me that opportunity, and I'm ready for the questions.
Thank you so much, Comrade Rogers Monama. Colleagues, let me remind you that the presenter here is an experienced lawmaker who served in local municipality, district municipality, and provincial legislature. He also served as a chairperson of SCOPA in Limpopo. He is currently an MEC of Economic Development. He is an ANC PEC PWC member in Limpopo and the head of political education and training for the ANC in Limpopo. Thank you so much, Comrade Monama, for giving us that insightful information on the link between politics, the state, and the government, and giving it a South African context. We really appreciate your time. You've got a busy schedule, we know, but we decided that when we invite you to come and present, you avail yourself. We are so humbled that you accepted our invitation. But also we are humbled that we have got about 39 participants in total in our midst, and that excludes those who have joined on other social media platforms. Without a waste of time, I'll give colleagues a chance to make comments, raise questions, and make some inputs. I'll go to Joseph Komani, followed by Samsung. I'll propose that if it's possible, colleague, when you are asking your question, switch on your camera for some time so that you can see the face. We don't want to be answering to faceless people. We want to answer to people that we can see. We don't want to answer to faceless people. So when you ask your question, switch on your camera, ask your question, then you can switch it off. Then we'll take 3 questions at a time and allow Comrade Rogers Monama to respond. We'll take Joseph K, Samsung SM, and Isaac Mashangu. That's the first cohort of people who are going to ask questions. Over to you, Joe K.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Comrade Rogers, I think the presentation is very enlightening indeed. And then I have made some notes, and then what I would like to surmise is that you spoke about government which comes into power as a result of elections. It comes and goes, but the government also implies that those are the people who are exercising power. To exercise power, I suppose, is to be engaged in politics, because politics is about decision making, it's about resource allocation, it's about constructing a non-racial, a non-sexist, and non-discriminatory society in the South African context, which is very much important. And you have mentioned the fact that there is no way in which you can divorce politics from government. I do agree with you that the two are inseparable, actually, if not one, which is very much important. But I want us to reflect. I also wanted to talk about the notion of cadre deployment, because in some quarters, the narrative has been that the failure of the state, many people attribute, I don't think we have reached that particular stage, but people, perhaps they are blowing the matter out of proportion to say that the reason why the state is failing, the reason why the state is failing is precisely because of the notion of cadre deployment. And I would like to agree with you that it is not, the concept itself is not problematic per se. The issue is how you implement the principle of cadre deployment, the kind of people that you engage in so that they are able to control the levers of the state. But I also want us to reflect on the Marxist argument, which talks about the state being the executive arm of the bourgeoisie. And I would like to hear your view on this one, to say, to what extent does that hold true for the South African situation? Is the state, which is controlled by the government which is controlled by the ANC, the executive arm of the bourgeoisie? I want to hear your view on that one. Otherwise, I will come back if there is any other issue. Thank you, Sediko.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Isaac Mahlangu, then we go to Jabulani.
Sorry, sir. You said Samsung.
Sorry. Your hand is down and you disappeared. Sorry, I thought you chickened out. My sincere apologies. That's the reason why I'm requesting people to switch on their cameras when I pronounce that they're coming. So it's Samsung.
I understand.
Then we'll close with Isaac Mahlangu. Jabulani will go to the next. You'll go on the next round, Jabulani. You are just noted for now.
No. Thank you very much, Chair. And I would like to greet everyone on the platform, and especially our new MEC, the leadership, Mr. Monama. Look, this is a very important. It's a very important conversation, and I think it's coming at a time where South Africa needs it. In other words, the political side, where it merges the whole concept of state versus the issue of government. And I'm glad that Mr. Monama there touched on the issue of constitution. Constitution is very important because we can all make a lot of noise in terms of which one is permanent between the states, and which one is is temporary between the states and the government. But I mean, look, for my side, there are two things that I need to touch on. Number one is the issue, the role of the constitution in terms of strengthening, that linkage that we have between the state and the government and number two is the issue of the role of democracy. In terms of, I think we're very aware that in South Africa we've got what we call Chapter 9 institutions.
We have lost you, Samsa. Sorry, we can't hear you clearly now. You went far away now.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, no, so sorry about that. I was saying that in South Africa, we are fortunate enough because we've got what we call Chapter 9 institutions, which are really playing that constitutional part that Comrade Rogers was saying, that you can't talk about state and its linkage to government without having to mention the constitution, which is the reason why in South Africa we have the likes of your public protector, the likes of your auditor general, and so on and so forth. And in terms of the role of the Democrats, I mean, I had hoped that when Mr. Monama was giving the examples of how government are changed, I thought you'll include the issue of dictatorship. Sorry about that. So there's a section there's a section in political science. I'm an engineer by profession, but there's a section in a political science that talks about that, how the dictatorship comes in when you have the issue of a state and the government. And then I think if you had to do what we call correlation, you'll find out that linkage becomes smaller and smaller and smaller as the dictatorship increases. In other words, if you go to your Islam states, I mean, our president is in Saudi Arabia as an example, you would find that actually the difference between the state and the government is very, very limited. And if you go to fully democratic countries like the likes of your USA, your South Africa, you'll find that there's a clear division, and which is the reason why you'd find that countries like ours are the ones that have Chapter 9 institutions, because their job is to make sure that if I come in as a president of the country, I know what is it that I need to do, because the constitution is there that is aimed, its aim is to guide me. So as I said, I had wished that when he was speaking about the issue of the constitution, you'll sort of touch a little bit in terms of other institutions like your Chapter 9 that are relevant in making sure that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we think that there's a difference between the state and government, while there is not, because of the dictatorship. I mean, you can talk about Zimbabwe as an example. Zimbabwe find itself in that situation where those institutions were weakened, and as they were weakened, the political arm, which in my book is the government, was coming closer to what we call the government, the state arm. And as it comes closer, that line that divides them becomes so thin, then the dictatorship takes over. What does that mean? It means that you can talk about anything that you talk. I mean, my leader there before me spoke about the issue of cadre deployment. I mean, cadre deployment is everywhere. It's just that people won't tell you. I mean, I had an opportunity to work in Europe, and I've seen how political, political role of government in the economy, and of course in terms of deploying the right people in those in institutions, especially institutions that they believe that are very strategic in driving the economies and of course the political environment of those particular countries. So in summary, as a part of my question, I really want my leader, the Comrade Rogers, to touch a little bit in terms of the issue around the dictatorship, in terms of making sure that the very same difference that was trying to define is getting smaller and smaller. And you'll see it, Chair, as we move forward in South Africa, where the issue of a ruling party failing to get 50%. That's when I believe those institutions will be weakened, because you'll find that most of them will tend to be even too factional. I mean, if you had to look at South Africa in say 96, 97, probably 98, when most of these institutions were formed, you will find that most of them were strong, very strong. And as we move forward into a democracy that doesn't have outright winners, like in South Africa with the ANC, they are becoming weaker. You'll hear people say, during the days of President Zuma, public protector was anti-Zuma. Some come back and say, no, now the current, rather the suspended public protect is on the side of Zuma. And somebody say, no, but the acting one now is on the side of Cyril Ramaphosa. It normally happens because now we are finding ourselves in such a way, the democracy is maturing, and as it matures, it actually weakens the key states, institutions like your SARS and the NPAs and so on and so forth. So, I mean, that would be my question. I know, Chair, I was all over, but I'm trying to say, by the way, as I said, my name is Bushielo, Philip Bushielo. It's just that my phone is showing as Samsung.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question is purely on the understanding that as we move forward, we'll find ourselves in a situation where the very same difference that is trying to highlight is actually becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and you'll see the dictatorship emerging out of that. Because I mean, if you have a situation where, as an example, Auditor General is dysfunctional, right? So it means that myself, I'm just giving an example, a CEO of a state entity, I can do as I wish, because I know that I can just phone somebody in that office and say, no, you're going to cover me up, right? Why? Because those institutions are weakened. In no time, the whole country will collapse from the governance perspective. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bushielo. We go to Isaac now. You can switch off your camera, Mr. Bushielo. Then Isaac, you'll be the last one. Let's make it a little bit short so that we can have more time of engaging. Isaac?
Thank you very much, Mr. Rakolote. Greetings to the Honorable MEC, Mr. Monama, and the other honorable members on the platform, as well as all other participants who are engaged in this particular important engagement on this day. I was intimating to a former lecturer and a friend of mine from the University of Limpopo, Dr. Rasudi Manyaka, when he intimated on how he came about to study public administration, and that was by listening to Mr. Monama. And that invoked something in me as a student of public administration, as he intimated some of the characteristics that have got to do with the state, politics, and governance. And I would appreciate that he also goes into some of the actors that are participants in the system that encompasses all these instruments, to the extent that you've got social interest groups, you've got media, and you've got other independent organizations, NGOs, that are participating in the state, and all with different interests, and how that has got a bearing and brings about a configuration into how the states would need to conform and configure itself to balance all those various interests. And as he would have been a participant in at least 2 of the 3 arms of states, as he's been in the administration at the level of the province and now in the executive at the level of the province, how does his experience, his understanding of how these components interact assist to bring the knowledge not only to his peers in government, but also to the communities in understanding how the states operate, and how does he then bring the knowledge and information that he has, the experience that he brings with him to reconfigure the portfolio that he has been tasked with the responsibility in, to respond to the everyday questions of the ordinary South Africans with varying interests, so that it becomes an encompassing institution and instrument of the people. That is what I would have appreciated that the Honorable MEC expands on to practicalize, so that people have got a conceptual understanding of at least what it would encompass for all those components working together in unison, so that the state is able to respond to the needs of the ordinary people in South Africa. I thank you, Mr. Rakolote.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahlangu. Before I bring in Comrade Rogers, but he will decide whether he's going to respond or not. He's here in his capacity as an ANC PEC and PWC member and head of political education. So if he's willing to respond to things related to the department that he's heading politically, is up to him. But we agree that he's here as a head of political education of the ANC and a PWC and PEC member. Over to you, Comrade Rogers. I'm trying to bail you out somewhere.
No, thanks very much. I don't need any lawyer to bail me. I'm here to respond
yes.
to any question, and if comrades feel that to some extent I have to venture into some discussion around my area of deployment, that's something else that I think I can't avoid.
Yes.
How do you separate me from the Rogers as the head of political education?
We can't separate politics from government and from the state.
Yeah, that's the very same debate. That's where I'm going. Politics and government and power. How do you separate an individual who is holding a particular responsibility in government and the politics that is advancing vis-a-vis his deployment? That's why there is no contradiction in the very same question that I think has been posed. But let me welcome and say I'm happy about the contributions that comrades are advancing, but also they will enrich us as we discuss going forward, which I think is quite resourceful, more especially the issue of the cadre deployment. If you go to Cape Town, if you go to Tshwane, you go to Joburg, not recently, but Ikuruleni, I'm just citing those areas that are being governed by the opposition. What are they doing as soon as they arrive in the office? They remove all those people that they think they are ANC members, and they bring their own people. What do you call, is it a cadre deployment, or what do we call it, or it has another nickname that we don't know? But also, Chair, what is fundamental and important that I think we have to contextualize, as and when they come in, are they not using the PFMA that has been advanced by the African National Congress, PFMA, and so forth? What is it that they've changed? Why, if they are serious, they don't change the procurement system that we have, the procurement situation that we have in the South African context, whereby we procure services and so forth for the people. Why can't they change it? If they have their own parties, if they have their own program of transforming the society and using the same things that we've been using and trying to perfect the system. What I think I've observed is that the state is a contested terrain. That's my point. I think Joseph was correct that the contestation is not about these good policies that we have. The contestation, if you want to go and analyze it, is more about the allocation of resources and nothing else. Who are the beneficiaries in that? And I fully agree with Comrade Joseph that the issue of cadre deployment is blown out of context and sometimes is loosely used to advance some narrow political interest, not necessarily that they mean what they mean. And whether it's a bourgeoisie state, inseparability part of it is a debate on its own, because we're living in a global village which South Africa happens to be. And the dominant economic policy that we have is capitalism. Capitalism being capitalism, its aim, it benefits the few, the bourgeoisie, and your proletariats. The proletariats are the working class, and the relationship is always conflictual because the bourgeoisie wanted to maximize their profit, and this one offered their labor. And that's one thing that I think is important to have that understanding, that that's why there is this, which I think we'll discuss later, what do you call the progressive bourgeoisie, whether there is any progressiveness in the bourgeoisie or not. Because, for instance, in my, immediately when I was appointed, people were insulting at me to say, but we are bringing investment in the province, you don't want to see me. Even before I could go to the office, we want the meeting as a matter of urgency. And he said they want to create jobs. And I said, no, stop there. The aim of any business person is to make money. These other ones, they just find the expression creation of jobs. That's where you can go, unless you convince me otherwise. But this noise that you are saying that you want to create jobs is something else that we can discuss and quantify. But the main aim of you investing in the province is to make money, because we have seen an opportunity that we want to exploit. That's basically, it's up to you to say, is it a bourgeoisie or what? But the private sector is there to make money and nothing else. When they invest, the first thing is how they are going to leverage on the economic opportunities that are there and to exploit the toiling masses, which are the workers, because they will not pay them the 10% that they demand. That's one debate I think that we can venture into. Buzoro, the role of the state to strengthen the constitution of vis-a-vis, all of us, I think, we're agreeing that the African National Congress has brought many progressive policies, and what is lacking sometimes, which even us as the political party were admitting. And as we prepared ourselves for the 55th National Conference, is that the policies are there, but the implementation is something else that we have to fine tune and sharpen to ensure that they benefit our people, because everywhere you go in every facet, the policies are there. The question is, why are we not implementing them? And this chapter is not only chapter 9, When you are an engineer, you can't be understanding it as well. It's not only chapter 9. All we are agreeing is that our country, led by the African National Congress, is endowed with the oversight bodies. You are chapter 9 and chapter 10. In chapter 10, you have the Public Service Commission, which I think is there to guard the issue of the cater deployment, because it says the do and the don'ts in terms of the public administration, that we must at all material times maintain what you call the professionalism and inculcate an issue of ethics. And that's one debate that I think we have to go. And also your public protector, your auditor general, your gender commission, all those points that I think you have to go into that are endowed with the mandate of oversight. To look at the mandate of oversight. There is an echo which I don't know where it comes from. No, thanks very much. But not necessarily just to problematize the issue. The issue is that we have some oversight bodies that I think they are there to ensure that they guard against the public purse. And in that public purse, the ANC government, these are the things that have been introduced by ANC government. They were not there. You usually have what you call ombudsman. What was that ombudsman doing? The majority of the people who were benefiting, the white, if you want and make an analysis and a study about ESCOM, 99.9% of people who were making business with ESCOM were whites, and very few black. It's only through the BBB policies that the ANC has introduced that it broadened the space that even the black people were able to participate in that sector. But the predominantly dominant people there were the whites, and no one is saying anything about that. And that's one thing that is quite worrying. Of course, subliminary and subconsciously, we are all agreeing that we have to redouble our efforts so that we are able to transform the socioeconomic conditions of our people and to ensure that we accelerate service delivery so that it benefits our own people. But over and above, we can have the economy that grows, but it doesn't create jobs. Our aim, I think, as the African National Congress-led government is to ensure that to some greater extent, we take this country to the highest economic trajectory that all of us, we must go. And there is that narrative that we must dismiss, that ANC is corrupt. The question is, how do you compare it with other? Don't we have areas of that the AG has isolated in the Western Cape? You look at the Limpopo, it's one of those provinces that has achieved more in terms of clean governance, together with that Western Cape that is led. You know that if you make an analysis on the study and the findings of the Auditor General, he says that, and you must go and refer it so that you are not saying that I've just said it for political reasons. I'm not trying to be defensive in terms of even the issues. To say that the provincial government, because of the judicious and visionary stewardship of Ntate Chubu Matavata as the premier, has assisted the province to turn the corner and to ensure that there is a clean audit. We have about 5, if not 6, clean audit opinion in the province, and is a good step in terms of the corporate governance to assist other provinces like your Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, Free State. They don't even have a single clean audit, but I'm counting those one. And we have one municipality which was Capricorn now. Is called, there is another one, Waterberg. which got clean audit. We no longer have some disclaimers in the province. They used to be the order of the day in the province. But I think these are the very same policies that have been introduced by the ANC, the issue of the consequence management, the issue of ensuring that the utilization, the prudent utilization of public resources is one of the key areas that the ANC-led government is always advancing and advocating. Like I said, and I'll always say it, within the accountability ecosystem, I think the ANC is best in terms of the system that they've brought to ensure that our people benefit out of that. It's just that in some instances we have what we call the internal control deficiencies or what we call non-compliance with the applicable supply chain management process and the deviations, which I think are not supposed to be there because there are some applicable legislation and prescripts that regularize how to conduct our processes, because it's very clear to say that if you wanted to procure a particular service, these are the processes that you must follow: the bid evaluation committee, the bid adjudication committee, but they just ignore them and throw the script out of the window, and they do their own things because of their personal things. And that's why the AG will always identify those things as material irregularities, the things that people deliberately do. But that does not say these people represent the ANC. And the worst part, or the worst scenario, is that they are the public servants, they are professionals in their own right, but they just go there to violate the applicable rules that are there. And what I'm trying to say is that what is the policy positions that we have in the Western Cape, which is led by the DA, and the ones that are led by the ANC? Nothing has been brought forward in that regard. And we are ready to contest that space and to ensure that there is no new policy dimension that I think can be seen in that regard. And that's why I wanted to respond to some of the questions that we have. And I did not have a view of Dr. Manyaka. I would love to have that. What was his academic observation in terms of these contradictions and the conceptual definition of the three concepts: politics, state, and governance, and so forth. And we mustn't, I must maintain that we mustn't mix them because they are not the same, but they are interrelated, inextricably interrelated, and you can't separate them. Of course, they are inseparable, but inseparability of them does not necessarily mean that they are the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Comrade Rogers. Yes, they are not the same, but they're interdependent also, like you're saying. I always tell people that even the process of appointing the Chief Justice is political, because the Chief Justice is appointed by a politician who is the president. The president is a politician who started as a member of parliament, voted in through a political party list, and then nominated by politicians in parliament to become a state president, and then he's become a state president, then he appoints the Chief Justice. So there's a link in all these things. Jabulani, you are next.
Thanks, my leader, and greetings to leadership. Am I visible, Chair?
You are audible,
not visible,
not
but you are audible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would want.
Now you are visible. We can even see you in your classes. That's nice.
Thanks, Chair. I would want you to follow instructions. But Chair, I appreciate. Let me first appreciate the presentation by my leader. And of course, it's an important discussion. It's an important presentation, which I hold a view from where I am sitting, that we need to take it forward. But taking it forward, we need to deal with the state separately, although they are interlinked, as you said, Chair. But deal with state separately, deal with government separately, deal with society separately, and add the power and the politics there too. But I'm sure this we will do as we move on, and I appreciate the subject. But Chair, I do not want to get into, and I think there's a temptation in the discussion that I've been following up to now to discuss our African National Congress and the current affairs of South Africa vis-a-vis the presentation. I held a view, and my understanding was that the presentation was purely on the basis of state governance and politics, irrespective of what is happening, though at some instances we have to make reference to what is happening in our country. But necessarily, I think the discussion needs to teach us in terms of saying what is it that is a state and how does it unfold and what is its purpose and all those type of issues. That's the first point we wanted to make, Chair. But secondly, Chair, we wanted to get clarity from my leader and maybe invite comment from my leader in relation to the second, this point that seeks to say, while the state, okay, let me rephrase it in this fashion, that the state necessarily, while it is a permanent state, it is not, it is a type of a state. And I'm sure other leaders have referred to a capitalist state, but you have different military states and different states, and democratic states, socialist states, you name them. But based on the constitution of the state, it then dictates in terms of what form and type of the state is and what trajectory that state has got to take, and then informs government in terms of whatever policies you adopt should not deviate from this trajectory of the state. That's the first point. The second point. The third point relates then to the international states and or government and or institution, their influence in the trajectory, in the political trajectory of South Africa at government level, particularly because it is at government level where policies are developed and sought to be implemented, as my leader indicated, that a political party would get in and develop policies, seeks to implement those policies, but those policies are not immune from international influence. What could be, in our case, be that influence from IMF, other nations, in particular, nations like your Cuba, Venezuela, your China, you name them. What is their influence in our lifetime? And then the last point that we want to make, Chair, is that, and we invite the leader in this instance, that the state apparatus, they have never, and they would not, and they don't intend to be neutral. They will never be neutral. Be it courts, police, army, you name them, they would never be neutral. At every instances when the state is threatened, not government, when the state is threatened, they will then come in and defend the state. An example for let me make an example now, that of there are a number of cases that have been decided upon by the Constitutional Court, but one that comes to mind is Resolution 1 of 2018. That what would have happened in an event that the state ruled in favor of the workers, and the state says we don't have money. It then meant that the president of the country would be in contempt of court. That in itself threatened the state. The state took it, the courts took a decision that who do we dish between the African National Congress and the state? They decided to dish the state. They decided to dish the African National Congress, particularly because they're in defense of the state. That's the example we want to make. I invite my leader maybe might have a contrary view in relation to the purpose of the state apparatus. I would not want to deal with the section 10, sections 29, because that would want me to deal with the South African situation with, and I agree with leaders that have made reference to South African situation, that indeed is difficult to avoid it. But I just wanted to deal with the core issue as my leader has presented. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Jabulani. Over to you, Comrade Rogers.
Yeah, thanks very much. I can't run away. I'm prepared to engage, and I can suddenly experience some load shedding when I'm supposed to respond to some of these questions.
We'll go right to your home and drag you and say, come out and respond.
Yeah, firstly, let me state upfront that, and thanks for that, and I welcome the critique that colleagues are putting forward, and I really appreciate that, because that's the purpose of us having this type of platform of academics and intellectuals. And in that space, I don't think I will run away. I will have my own view, but Chair, I also share the same sentiment that I think the topic itself was too loaded in the context that there are many issues which I think in their own right, they are topical issues, the issue of the state. If sometimes you can invite us come again and invite colleagues to go and research, and I'll come and make a presentation so that when we discuss, all of us were empowered on that subject matter only, the state, and what are the literature saying about that and so forth. And it will assist us as and when we go to the policy conference of the African National Congress. But Chair, I must also state up front that nothing will divorce me from the African National Congress. I was making deliberately, because I'm the leader of the African National Congress. And I have to critique the policies that we have. That's my responsibility. But over and above, I must also give an independent comparative analysis about this African National Congress, which I happen to be a member and a leader, with other political parties that are in that space. And then it is in that context, Chair, that, like I said, that South Africa is a constitutional democracy, meaning that the constitution is the supreme authority. It regulates the issue of the separation of power, so that we don't have what you call an overreach, that other powers of the judiciary invade on the powers of the executive and the legislature. I think that's one is a fair critique that I think colleagues. But I think Jabulani has raised a very critical matter. Yeah, the neutrality. Who appoints these judges? And who appoints these judges? The judges are appointed in a political process, and as such, they are expected to be non-partisan and independent. They must be sober as judges. I think you'll learn about that. Sober as judges. And that's one terrain that we can contest. In the recent, the current judge president that we have, was he the one that was recommended by that panel? That's the question that we must ask. And why the one who has been recommended was not appointed? That's the question. And as and when this person adjudicate over these matters before him or her, how independent, that thing is not going to overcloud his discretion. That's the basic rule. And I'm not insinuating anything, but I'm just putting it for you for your own scrutiny. Yeah, let me go straight to resolution 1, which is very critical that comrades also have to deal with the subject matter and apply their minds without being subjective but objective. The reason why, Chair, because this is a matter of the collective bargaining council that we have, that the platform in terms of the Labor Relations Act is created that they will go to the bargaining council sectoral discussion about the welfare and the well-being of members in terms of their fringe benefits, in terms of the economy of scale, and look into what is affordable in terms of the state, but also to ensure that we have motivated personnel or the workforce in terms of the human capital. So you have a situation whereby the state agrees and say this is unaffordable, but if the state then later renege on the same agreement that has been agreed there, and that is a process that I think has been there, and the constitutionality and the legality part of it is something else. And when they consider the determination of giving them that potential multi-year increment, it was based on the issue of the available resources in the fiscus. And that resolution 1 of 2018, and you can quote me in this, and I'm prepared to have a discussion with comrades around the issue, is that South Africa is becoming well-furnished. And there is this thing that the middle class or the middle strata feel that they are not beneficiaries of the very same thing, because you give people free RDP, social grant, the big, and everyone, the free health, except these ones who are feeding many families. And there is in the municipality, there is in terms of the indigent register, there is what we call the cross-subsidization, the rich subsidizing the poor. But the point that I wanted to bring, there is that impasse or the stalemate between the organized labor and the state, whereby they say the state has reneged on the agreement, they go to court. The agreement is there, is clear and articulate and explicit to say, in 3 years, you must give these people this percentage. They go there to the judge, the judges which have to be sober. And then the judge says, no, the government was correct. That's what the court said in terms of their verdict. They are saying government was correct. Correct on what? On saying that they must renege on the agreement. That's the question that we must ask ourselves. Because if you have a contract, you must look at the contract. What does the contract say? The contract says that the state has an obligation to honor the agreement. What was the use of the agreement? Because the state is a signatory in that same agreement. But here the state is the one who is reneging. They subject this to court, and the court said, no, the organized labor, you are wrong. You can't get paid in this regard. But I don't have a problem with that, how they've arrived at that particular determination. But my issue is that 3 months, and it's very clear you must go and look into that determination to say that because of the fiscus, there are no financial resources in terms of the fiscus that we have in the country. The country is experiencing some challenges. 3 months down the line, there was a proposal that in terms of Public Office Bearers Remuneration Act, that there must be an increment of 3%. And in that, judges are included to benefit. Is the politician, the magistrate, and the judges and other people. They go there. And they then said, no, it's okay. They okay that process, that there is nothing wrong. The resources are allowing. And they give them that increment. And when the labor says, but you said there is no money, then there is a lot of hullabaloo to say. And no one will say, no, I don't need this money. All of us, we need money. That's the state of capitalism where we are. But I think we mustn't be seen speaking from both sides of our mouth, indicating right but turning left. Those are some of the contradictions that we are experiencing. I'm not necessarily saying or insinuating that they were wrong or they were right, but the judges have to stick on what they've pronounced in terms of the precedences, because you can't say today there is no money, but when it affects you, you become selfish and say no. Is correct that they have to get the money. But what complicates matters is when you are the beneficiary of that very same process, that you told people that they can't benefit because of lack of resources. That's how I wanted to put it, without sugarcoating it, because it's in the public domain, and as researchers, we have to compare notes and see whether this debate obtains, because the debate is inconsistent in terms of my observation and my literature review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Comrade Rogers. I will just take some few from the chat box, then we are going to close. I see colleagues on the chat box that are still talking about cadre deployment, and I think we have covered it a lot, cadre deployment. But there's a question that says, they heard you talking about ANC-led government having good policies. And the question is it the state or the government that comes with the impossible criteria or requirements to fulfill these policies? Because we are saying the ANC-led government has got good policies, but then is it the state or is it the government that comes with an impossible criteria or requirements to access the available opportunities in the country? How does politics affect those requirements? That's a question that I got from the chat box. Over you to Comrade Rogers.
No, thanks very much. My emphasis was on ANC-led government and nothing else, not ANC's state-led state. The reason is that that's one dichotomy that I think we have to venture into, because when you look into that subject discussion, it's neither here nor there. But safe to say that is an ANC-led government, because ANC is the governing party, not the ruling party, which is a debate on its own. It's a governing party, not a ruling party. So it has nothing to do with the state, but something to do with government. Because in government, that's where ANC have more power in terms of the ministers, the MECs, the mayors that they appoint to advance their policies. That's the simplest way of contextualizing it. So is the government, not a state. And the ANC-led government has good policies, of course, but there are some deficiencies and inconsistencies in terms of the application of the very same policies that we're talking about. And that's one area that I think we have to improve on, not necessarily to say that those policies are bad, but they are good policies. They are policies that they want to transform the livelihood of our people and to ensure that we transform the economy and transform the socio-economic conditions of our people, but also to create an environment that is conducive for investment and economic growth. And we can only do that when you crowd in the investment that they will make the economy, to propel the economy to grow. And as the economy grow, it must create more job opportunity, so that you don't have a social protest, that they can lead to coup d'etat. People not, the government not experiencing what they call the trust deficit or the confidence deficit. If you look, many people, it's not like the ANC is losing. It's just that there is that element of despondency. People do not go to the votes. They don't go, and only few, less than 50%, go and vote. And that's the debate for other. But Chair, I'm more than prepared if you have the other topic that you want to invite me. I'm always combat ready to come, and I'll research on that topic and articulate over it. I'm not afraid for any discussion. I will just come and engage academically, politically, and so forth. And even in my area of deployment, I don't know whether you call it a catered deployment in my case, or what you call it. But thanks very much for affording me the opportunity to come and share my ideas and my view and thoughts about what I think I've assessed, the clinical assessment, the academic literature review that I've conducted. And thanks very much. It's a rare moment to get this tender to come and
without the tender committee and a bid.
It's an unsolicited bid. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Comrade Rogers. Like I said, colleagues, in the beginning, my name is Sediko Rakolote. I'm the founder and the trustee of the Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute Trust, which was established for public benefit activities. And one of the activities that we're doing is to host webinars where we discuss various topics, which ranges from social issues, politics. And if you want to get the recordings of these webinars, you can go into my YouTube channel, just click Sediko Rakolote YouTube, then you can get all the recordings of this. And now we've got another date with Comrade Rogers, that we're going to have another date where we'll discuss purely the issue of the state. And that date is going to come before the ANC conference that is coming in December. So I'll keep in touch with Comrade Rogers. We'll get a date, and please check on our Facebook and you will be invited to participate. If there are other members of this group that are here now and you want to suggest a topic, just drop the topic on the chat box, and also propose a speaker. Then we can invite that speaker to come and present. Thank you so much, colleagues, for participating. And we can only say, have a lovely evening. You can switch on your cameras now so that you